I'm pleased to present the next speaker, in this case, Yoad. He's the CEO of Myrro. He's the distinguished veteran of the Prime Minister's Office Elite Unit. He brings more than 12 years of experience in infrastructure, DevOps, and IT security in both on-prem and cloud complex projects. And a little bird told me that he's into music. So we are going to ask the first question by the end of this session would be, what does it mean? What do you really like? But again, that will wait for the end of the session. So go ahead. The stage is all yours.
Awesome. So thank you so much. First of all, thank you, Mandy. Appreciate it. And thank you for the intro, Gidi. So you stole my thunder, first of all. I don't know, another two facts. So musician is one. I really love cats. I do like dogs as well, but like cats are very dear to my heart. And I have a weird last name in all of the countries besides in Hungary, which just Fekete means black in Hungarian. So just for everybody that asked me, because every time people ask me, how do you pronounce that? So just to elaborate, prior to starting Myrro, I was at Microsoft, where I led a team of DevOps engineers in the cloud application security group. And the reason being for starting Myrro is because Microsoft was one of the companies that's been attacked by the SolarWinds attack. And my team was part of the incident response group. And, we did what we have to do to make sure, nothing has been compromised. Although we'll still see leftovers with the recent news. But we quickly understood that we don't have a way to mitigate such an attack if this were to happen directly to Microsoft or one of our open source. So when I realized there's no solution out there, I went ahead and started Myrro. So first of all, what are we going to talk about today? And again, we're trying to do that short and to be concise, so bear with us, it will be fun. The first thing, just wanted to say that, as a DevOps engineer, Elastic is very close to my heart. I was a deep integrated user. And for me, as like doing that with Mandy as a CISO of such an important software company, which, well, she didn't mention it, but the software is not just that you're using Elastic as Elastic. It's under the hood. So many companies, observability and logging and security products. So the amount of responsibility is just out of bounds. So that's worth a bigger appreciation. And I wanted to focus on one aspect of those risks Mandy spoke about, which is the software supply chain risk, and to actually see how we can manage that in a way that will, one, actually put protection around our software delivery pipeline. And the second thing is, Mandy mentioned that threat landscape is keep evolving, and every hour you have a new threat, so you need to prioritize. So how do we reduce the attack surface in a concise way by prioritizing the risk in the SDLC? So what is exactly the supply chain as the attack surface, right? So I'll start with the second point here, and I'll basically just say it. We are utilizing a lot of open source in our software, and I don't think I'm bringing any news with that. But for the first point, I'll give you an example. And the recent XZUTLs attack, it kind of made my life easier for this talk, and I assume you all heard about that. But just in case, so last Friday, it was reported that a malicious code that enabling unauthorized remote SSH access has been detected within XZUTLs, which is, if you're not familiar, it's a widely used package, which is present in major Linux distributions. Fortunately, the malicious code was discovered pretty quickly by a guy named Andress, and it managed to infect only 2 of the most recent versions of the package. And those were released within the past month, so stable version of most of the Linux distributions were not affected. The thing is, this supply chain attack came as a shock to the open source community, as this package was considered a trusted and like a scrutinized project. But the attacker, what he did, he built up a credible reputation for almost a couple of years as a respected open source developer. And he used highly obfuscated code in order to evade detection by code reviewers. So with this kind of risk around us, how do we manage all of the noise from the regular vulnerabilities while still tapping on malicious code? So we'll see that today. First of all, just wanted to kind of elaborate the big difference between vulnerabilities and attacks. First of all, a vulnerability is usually a mistake made by a developer, which might turn into either a 0-day or just a straight up CV. And a supply chain attack is an actual malicious code by definition. So the XZUTLS attack wasn't a mistake, right? It was deliberately malicious code. And the other difference is the detection. It's easier to know whether a vulnerability exists in your code since it has a CV identification that can be tracked by your neighborhood SCA, the software composition analysis tools you use. The trickier differentiation is how to defend against that. While a vulnerability can usually be detected and then remediated by the company's SLA, supply chain attacks comes in various forms and are harder to detect, even as they happen. And I think SolarWinds Orion attack was persistent for months before even executed. And one small comment here, while a 0-day is in fact a vulnerability that has the characteristics of a supply chain attack, we choose to include it within the category of vulnerabilities, since normally there's no way of remediation until it's actively discovered, and by then it normally already exploited. And of course, an exploited vulnerability is still a supply chain attack in the form of the MOVEit FTP server we've all seen. Oh, press too much. There you go. So this is something I actually borrowed from Gartner with a bit of modification, and it mainly relates to external attack surface management and not supply chain. But the main idea here made a lot of sense to me, and I think it makes a lot of sense for SDLC security as well. And I also copied the quote you see here on the left, just to say that I think sometimes people just make up numbers, but if it convinces organizations to adopt good practices, I'm in. But eventually it boils down to the obvious. And maybe Vio might answer your question. So first of all, we want to make sure we map all of the SDLC assets, from repositories to dependencies, CI/CD systems, CI/CD tools, artifact servers, etc. Second thing, we want to make sure we're detecting risks on the above in the form of vulnerabilities and malicious code. Third, prioritize. Prioritize based on multiple context indicators, and we'll double click on that in a second. And of course, we need to remediate with concise action items, because if we're not giving the engineering teams the concise action items they need to do, we're in a big problem. And the last thing, and Mandy mentioned that as well, we need to do those checks on every material change to our code and libraries, because otherwise, if we're doing that point in time, we'll be in danger, right? How do we do that? Many ways. Webhooks from the Gidi to the scanner, pull request integration, etc. Okay, so let's speak about the discovery itself. The way that we do it today is mostly by using SCA tools, as I mentioned. So we usually add our projects to the relevant platform through an integration, or maybe we use a CLI. The platform ingests the SBOM, which is the build of material from those open source files, usually found in our software manifest file. And then we can see the vulnerabilities according to the SBOM on the platform. The problem is the lack of attack detection and the false positive, which might cause an alert fatigue. Now, what do I mean by alert fatigue? We have tons of dependencies, right? It's almost 80% of the code. We scan the manifest files, and the SCA tool sees the name of the package and the version, and then it says, okay, vulnerability in the package, alert. Now, in big organizations, we might get to tens of thousands of vulnerabilities. So how do we prioritize that? Second thing, let's go to code attacks. And the why you should care about that, again, the XD attack, the SolarWinds, the UA parser, the 3CX, the immense increase of supply chain attacks happening in recent years, which in my opinion are as important as vulnerabilities, if not more, because even 4 years after the kind of poster kid attack SolarWinds, it's still happening. And this has two main reasons as far as I see it. One is the chain effect. I attack the weaker link, the XZUtils library, I get to as many Linux distribution servers I want, right? The second thing is a little bit more elusive, I would say. Today, to be able to perform attacks via the network perimeter is not as effective as it used to be. Breaching the IT organization, it's much, much harder to do because of cloud and restrictions, and we're not longer managing the infrastructure below. So in older time, it was easy to find an open Tomcat server with an admin interface, and then you go and put admin in the credential. There you go. You're just going into that server, and you can do network reversal and start, attacking the organization. But these kind of vectors are slowly drying up. Attackers turn to where the new meat is, and that's the open source and the third parties. So we don't really have the time to go through all of the attacks. But by the way, we do have a separate recorded webinar going through each one of those attacks you see here with a deeper dive. But for the sake of understanding, I'm putting it here so you can see it. And I will give the XD attack as an example of a combination of two attacks. One, malicious code in the repository in the sense of binary. And I'm also running, by the way, and then we have a build attack also, because part of the build compilation, there was another attack. But how do we detect those kind of attacks? So before we actually go and prioritize the vulnerabilities, let's put the guardrails on the attacks, which means detecting malicious code in the source code of the libraries we use with, let's say, detection rules. We can do maybe high entropy, maybe something that's trying to open an operating system process, obfuscated code. Why should we have an obfuscated code in open source? I mean, it's weird, right? Or encryption. Why should we call remote execution code from domains? That's weird. So we can put a bunch of rules, and maybe, by the way, also incorporate some AI on top of that, but not in a buzzword. Like we can actually use GPT-4 in order to reduce some of the false positive to get context. The second thing that we can detect is making sure that the compiled package of that source code matches the actual source. Why? Again, in the case of the XD attack, SolarWinds, UA parser, the compromise wasn't even on the source code level, which makes it much harder to detect. So how do we detect that? And now the second thing is the normal vulnerabilities, not the attacks. How do, once we have the attack guardrail in place, good for us, how do we prioritize the vulnerabilities now? We need context. Context meaning exploitability. Is it even possible to exploit? Reachability. Is the vulnerable code actually being used? So if we're using a calculator open source and we're using the add function to do 1 + 1, but the vulnerability is in the multiply function, should we fix that? Maybe we can deprioritize that because we have tons of other problems. Use case. What is the use case in the application? If we have an XML parsing vulnerability, but we're not doing any XML parsing with that library, should we fix that? And the last thing, is there a fix? Let's talk about the fix for a second. So the first factor is pretty simple, right? But there's a major difference between direct dependencies and transitive dependencies. Let's talk about direct. We can assume that for the majority of vulnerabilities that exist in the wild, there's an update we can apply. If there isn't, it's also an easy thing to know. Just simply check the associated CV and see if there's a fix. The problem begins with the transitive vulnerability fixes, which, by the way, is the majority of vulnerabilities. We can assume that we have a fix for the vulnerability, but does the parent dependency has already a version that contains the fix? Now, if we have many of those vulnerabilities, pardon my language, we're screwed. Should we upgrade one by one? Should we update all at once? We must prioritize that, or we waste tons of times on triaging. Exploitability. So you probably all know CVSS, and I guess you all know EPSS. So we'll briefly touch that. So those are kind of information that we have in the wild. So we don't have a lot of time to deep dive into the differences, but the CVSS one, so we have a few metric there, like attack vector. It's an indicator of the level of access that required for an attacker to exploit the vulnerability. This is one factor of the CVSS. Complexity, it indicates conditions beyond the attacker control that must exist in order to exploit the vulnerability, like specific environment, cloud, open ports, etc. Privileges. So do we need root access, or we can just act as a user and exploit the vulnerability? Do we need a user interaction, or is the vulnerability exploited by default? So those kind of the things that comprise the CVSS. And we have a newer method that's called EPSS. It's been around for a couple of years, I think. And it measures the likelihood of a vulnerability to be exploited in the wild. With that, we have a percentile of that vulnerability compared to the rest of the vulnerabilities. Now, EPSS scoring and CVSS scoring might be a complete discussion of its own, so not today. The next one is use case. What will happen if the vulnerability gets cold? Can I even have an effect of the machine? So CVSS and EPSS aren't enough. They don't take the organization or my product context as a factor while scoring the vulnerability, because they don't have that information. Take, for example, Log4j. Everybody knows Log4j, and also the snake YAML vulnerability. In the Log4j attack, attackers can get access to a shell on the machine and execute malicious code. On the snake YAML vulnerability, things are a little bit different. It's a YAML parser, and the potential damage that can be incurred relates more to what you're parsing. If it's user-based input contact or not. If there isn't a way to have a library parse user contact, then in the context of our application, we are not vulnerable theoretically. And by the way, another factor that I haven't spoken about, and it's important and relates to the use case as well, is the cloud environment context, which also relates to exploitability. But it's tightly coupled to how the user deploys the software. So let's say Log4j needs to be open in port 8080. Do I have port 8080 open on the deployed server or not? We need to know that. And finally, reachability. What do we mean by reachability? Am I actually using the vulnerability in the code? So as I mentioned with the calculator example, if I'm not even calling the vulnerable function, why should I fix it now? Maybe I have an SLA for my customers. Maybe I need to fix all of the criticals, but I can prioritize by that as well as the other factors. Let's take all of that and take it to remediation. I know I've been saying that like almost on every slide, but yes, also remediation is a topic on its own, but in a nutshell. If we combine all of the prioritization data we've gathered from the previous slides, we can generate a remediation plan that highlights, one, how many severe issues we have, because that's ultimately what we want to fix first. How many of those actually have a fix, and we can actually fix those, or we need to go back to Mandy and tell Mandy we can't, please excuse us. How many are exploitable? How many are reachable? And how are we using that in the application or not? Using all of those factors, we can greatly focus on our resources and remediation efforts. Okay, so we have our issues. We open a ticket, Jira ticket to the engineer saying, what do we need to fix it? So now we need to tell them, how are you using that in the code? And we can get that information. How are we using that in the cloud? We can get that information. We have APIs for everything. And that makes the security communication 360 degrees much, much better as far as I see it. But what if we can go a step further? Think about it. Maybe we can add a context about the upgrade. For example, if I'm telling you, you have to upgrade what you see here, request for 1 to 242, maybe an upgrade might break your code with a break in API change. But I look at the code and I can actually tell you if there's been changes that might break your code. That's a lot of information that can really help you. And lastly, remember the calculator example. What if all of a sudden we start using the vulnerable function tomorrow? We need to know about it, right? And continuous monitoring is a key. And I have a really bad example. Vulnerabilities, as far as I see it, is like washing the dishes. So if we keep piling those up, the cockroaches will come, right? But if we bring a dishwasher, AKA context, it makes it easier to go ahead and have a clean sink, right? And yeah, that's the price for me for the worst connotation or imagination. So I apologize for that.
You also need to have ferry, right? Because without ferry,
exactly,
the dishes are not clean enough.
Exactly, but I didn't want to, make advertisement here. So I just want to show you quickly, hands-on, how we do both of those things, like detecting malicious code on one hand, and on the other end also prioritizing. So I want to share the screen really quickly. Gidi, can you stop the?
Yes.
There you go.
Now the stage is yours.
Let's take, for example, the XZ attack use case. You can see my screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great. What we've done is that we've uploaded a malicious package to Maven, which is the Java repository for third-party open source. Now, this is the malicious version. Basically, we've put some code that can send data outside of the organization. And we've uploaded that in January. It's still here. By the way, if you'll download it, it wouldn't do any harm. It just send random text out of the machine. But you see, it has 0 vulnerabilities. Why? Because it's not a vulnerability. Like the XZ attack wasn't a vulnerability. How we can detect those kind of things? So if we monitor the repository that actually contains that problem, we can see that we have that dependency here. And what we can see exactly in the case of the XZ attack, we have a snippet, a bunch of code that isn't existing in the original source code. Why is it here? Why do we have code in the binary that isn't found in the source code? That's super weird. And then we can put context on that. So what does the code does? It opens a socket. Okay, even weirder. And the second thing, it tried to send it out of the organization. That's a big problem. So if we catch those kind of things and we kind of raise the flag, that could prevent us from releasing malicious code to our customers. And the second thing, as I've mentioned, the reachability. For each one of the vulnerabilities we can actually find, we can tell if it's being used in the code or not. And by that helps reduce a lot of the information, a lot of the false positive we get, because it won't be a surprise, because I guess most of you today already, when you manually triage those things, you find that you're not even using that vulnerability. So there's automatic ways to do it and reduce a lot of the noise that's coming from your scanners today. So that's it. Thank you so much for bearing with me. If there are any questions, happy to help.
Excellent. So we have a few. First question is, when in the development process, in which one of the phases, would you recommend to mitigate supply chain defects?
So if we're talking about the third party, which is most of the risk, because that's not our code, that's the easiest part, because we can connect to the source code repository, and then over there we have all of the dependencies, and we can go ahead and read that and inspect those. Another layer is the CI/CD, because sometimes not everything is found in the manifest files. Like sometimes you add like Docker images, or CI/CD tools or build tools, test tools, those are found in the CI/CD. That's another level. And of course, the Artifactory will restore the artifact that we built. We want to make sure that nobody managed to compromise our CI/CD, like in the case of SolarWinds and in the case of 3CX or Jump Cloud, what happened with their distribution server as well.
Okay, the next one is, and that's related to a question that we saw before, the last one that Mandy also got. How can you protect against AI type of attacks, especially now that even script kiddies can do those?
Well, eventually, AI is just a buzzword. So what actually we're talking about? So AI, we can have generated code, which is a problem. But if we're thinking about it in a traditional way, developers are using, let's say, Copilot, for example. So they're using Copilot as their AI code generator, which might bring malicious libraries or malicious code. But the same guardrails we have today can protect from those kind of things, because we can see the vulnerabilities or the malicious code they might bring. The problematic thing might be within the DLP and privacy space, because we do want to tap in and also ensure that as part of the AI libraries we use, because it's not only generated code, it's code that we're also using an AI for our software. And the biggest risk where most of our customers ask us, are you sending any of my data to GPT, which data means code? And I understand the question. It's a big risk, because using GPT really helps us get context, but we will never send customers code outside of their organization. That's just a big no-no.
Excellent. And another question we received, and that's for you, Mandy. As a CISO, how can you decide which security defects to fix first? So how do you prioritize specific defects?
That is a loaded question, one that doesn't have a very direct or simple answer. So first and foremost is understanding the broader aspects of your organization that I chatted about. What's the risk appetite? What's most critical to the success of the business that you are working within? And then within that, looking at the combination of what is the impact that you're trying to protect from, what is the cost, whether that's money or resource time, and balancing all of that out. Another piece of it is to look at what are existing controls in your environment that might be compensating. So if you receive a report that you have a very critical issue that you need to address, understanding how that manifests in your environment. And if you see, well, I've got kind of 3 controls and other things that should either lessen the criticality or help slow down or mitigate, then that means that's something that you can prioritize for a bit later. And so it's a lot of contextual information and understanding for your environment, but the core of it is looking at what are the things that can most impact the success of the organization that you're in today, and focusing on those things first.
Thanks for that one. And Yoad, you owe us basically two last things. So one is this last slide, or actually 3 things. So that last slide, that's one thing.
Yeah, so I skipped that because I don't like fluff, but it basically it makes sense, right? Securing the supply chain is hard work. Mandy said that before, and that's just one of the risks that we have in our application security, not to talk about the other threat areas we have. But I think if we look 10 years back, prioritization was a nice word. Today, it's a must. We just can't deal with the amount of problems we have, so we need to prioritize. And like Mandy say, if we're buying a solution for 10 million and then for the risk of 1 million attack, is it worth it? How do we prioritize what we do and what we buy and what we need in the organization? So that's my 2 cents here.
Excellent. And another that is a question, basically. Again, another question from Vioma Kargonkar. Even after so many awareness sessions and necessary information and education out there, we still see so many social engineering attacks happening. Can you suggest how can individuals and organizations protect themselves from such attacks? And I assume, by the way, the question can go to both of you.
Yeah, I think that I'll answer real quickly because it's funny. I think in organizations, one of the things we're doing, and we're a small startup, and I don't think you'll find a lot of small startup putting a lot of emphasis on the personal attack vector, because we're a small team. Like literally, I can see everybody out of my room, and those are very smart people. But we do mistakes, so we do phishing campaigns every month. That's something we do, and we keep track of all of the identities of in the organization, and we always try to see if we're getting more phishing emails and if it's being clicked. It doesn't cover everything, and we do training, but it's never enough. And I think my idea is to keep tackling the people, because you want to see who tries to click the bad things and understand why. And when you have the why, you kind of get on the plan on how to fix that. But I guess Mandy has her own thoughts about that as well.
Yeah, so Mandy, the question was, and let me try to get it again. The question by Vioma was, if there even after all this awareness sessions and necessary information, security and education we do to employees, but specifically in this case to engineers, we still see so many social engineering based attacks. Can you suggest how can individual and organization protect themselves much better from such attacks?
It's a great question, and one that I spend a lot of time thinking about these days. Social engineering at its core is not a cybersecurity specific issue. It is con games. It is preying on and taking advantage of human behavior and how humans respond and react to certain situations. And I don't think we're going to we can build that awareness, but fundamentally we can't change the core of human behavior. And so I think a lot of it is, and we're seeing this movement in the broader security industry, the focus on a much more human approach and much more ensuring our technologies, our processes are built and there's some embedded controls and protections to help. And it's thinking about it from, I think historically we tried to change human behavior in a security context and realizing that that's not going to work too well. So I don't have specific answers, but I see the right conversations and the right thinking happening today in the security front to try to get to some answers to the question that you asked.
I can also refer you to a question I asked. We mentioned Jerry from Walmart in the beginning. When I met him about a year ago, I asked him, because you have in Walmart, they have 2.5 million employees. How do you actually manage awareness in such a huge company? I mean, we are thinking about what to do even with the awareness, but some organizations cannot handle the awareness that well. I mean, you need to have like a TV channel in Walmart for awareness. I mean, educating 2.5 million, totally different roles. So I don't think there are, as you mentioned, there are right and wrong answers for awareness and how to tackle social engineering based attacks. Despite all the awareness is just one more control, maybe one of the important ones, because once everyone in the organization is security fanatic, obviously it's much better. But again, that's only one more control in our arsenal, not more than that. I mentioned it. Thanks for both of you. I mentioned before that you have 3 bets, Yoad, and so far you paid 2 of them. So the last one is, we spoke about music. So do you play, sing, or just listen? And based on your answer, may I suggest that people will meet you next week in Cybertech, maybe to hear you sing or play.
Yeah, unfortunately, startup life killed my music life. But yeah, I do play a bunch of instruments, very moderately in each one. But yeah, I still keep a couple of hours a week for that. And yeah, that's that.
So should we hear you next week in Cybertech? Playing something?
I can do that. Will be, a good marketing approach. I think instead of the zero trust sign on the top, I will just bring my guitar because CISOs are already tired of those signs. So maybe it would work.
Yes.
I'll take your advice.
And again, if with enough alcohol, and we all know that there is alcohol there,
yeah,
it might work.
Exactly.
So yes, that's a good opportunity. Next week is Cybertech in Tel Aviv. So if you are in the area, come and meet each and every one of us. I'll be there. You are, I assume you'll be there. And not sure, Mandy, if you'll be there, but I assume that people from Elastic will be there. Leo will be there. So it will be a great to meet you. So feel free to reach out and say hi, and we can meet for coffee in next week in Cybertech. So without further ado, it is time now to, 1 second, there is another question. How can you get the recording? So that's a really, really good question. So the recordings will be released probably within a week or so, maybe even less. So stay tuned and follow our Meetup group. You can see the QR code, and Lior just released it again in the chat. So go to that one, register, and you will get an heads up and notification when the recording is released. So that's about it. Everyone, thank you a lot, and stay safe and secure. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye all. Bye-bye.